The principle of zero products states that if A times B, if a product is equal to 0, if the answer to a multiplication problem is equal to 0, then one of the things at least that you're multiplying by has to be 0. If we've got a problem like 3 times 7 times negative 12.4 times 75 fourths times 2.661 times 0 equals what? You don't need a calculator because one of the things you're multiplying by is 0, so the answer is 0. So if we can take a problem and rewrite it so that it is a product, then we have the ability to find out what will make any of the factors equal to 0, and that's also going to be an answer. Suppose we had something like 6x squared minus 6x plus 8 is equal to 0. Now there's all kinds of combinations of things that will add together that equal 0, and when you break them up into 3 things, then you've got a mess on your hands. But if we can rewrite this as a multiplication problem, which is exactly what factoring means, then anything that would make either factor equal to 0 will make the whole thing equal to 0. So when we're factoring this, since this is just a plain x squared, the only way to get x squared is going to be x times x. Here we have 8. Let's look at the possible factors of 8. 1 times 8 or 2 times 4. We want factors of 8 that add up to 6. Start at the end of the problem and work your way to the left. So we want factors of this that do this to give us this. And I'm not even worried about the negative in front of the 6 yet. This adds up to 9. This adds up to 6. Bingo. So this is going to be a 2 and a 4. Factors of 8 that add up to 6. Now, to get this to actually work out so that when we multiply it out, we'll get a negative 6. To add these two numbers so that they come up with a negative 6, they're both going to have to be negative. And if you multiply this out, you'll see that you get this. So if I can find something that'll make x minus 2 equal to 0, then it wouldn't matter what x minus 4 was, the answer would be 0. Likewise, anything that'll make x minus 4 equal to 0 will make the whole thing 0. This, if I add 2 to both sides, gives me 2. This, if I add 4 to both sides, gives me 4. Now we can check this. If I put a 2 in place of the x, then I've got 2 squared minus 6 times 2 plus 8 should equal 0. This is 4 minus 12 plus 8. 4 and 8 is 12. 12 minus 12 is 0. So this is 0 equals 0. This is kind of a question mark here, but at this point it's absolutely certain that the solutions are indeed 2 and 4. Let's try another one. What if we had x squared minus 2x, minus 3 equals 0. Now, rule number 1 is that you have to have a 0. This must be 0. If this is not already 0, then subtract everything off of one side so that you have nothing left on one side. Because 0 is the only solution over here where knowing one of the answers to the factor will give you the answer to the whole problem. 0 is kind of the Superman of numbers. It's a kind of meek and mild Clark Kent when you're adding, because when you're adding 0, it does absolutely nothing. But when you multiply by 0, all of a sudden, this is the only problem in the world where you only have to know one of the numbers in order to know the answer to the whole thing. If it's a multiplication problem and you're multiplying by 0, it doesn't matter if you have 500 other numbers, none of them count. So 0 is the Superman of multiplication. Now, if I look at this, again, this is just a plain x squared here. So I want factors of 3. Well, I've got 1 and 3 to choose from. I want factors of 3 that when I subtract will give me 2. Fortunately, the difference of these is 2. So it's going to be an x and an x. It'll have to be the 1 and the 3. Doesn't matter the order. And now to get these two to add up to -2, it would have to be a -3 and a +1. And I suggest you, if you're not real practiced up at factoring, go ahead and stop this, multiply it back out, and confirm to yourself that this is right. So if I can find something that'll make either factor equal to 0, it'll work. In this case, x would be -1. In this case, x would be +3. Here's your answers. Now let's look at one other example. What if we had, say, x squared minus 4 equals 0? These are this is a difference of squares. This is your best friend when it comes to factoring. If you have a square, and x squared is obviously something squared, minus, hence it's called a difference, another square, and 4 we know is 2 squared. A difference of squares, a squared minus b squared, will always factor into what we call conjugates. The square root of the first one, a plus and a minus, and the square root of the second one. Conjugates are super, super important in math. This is the only combination where you can FOIL 2 binomials and only get 2 terms in your answer. So this will factor into x and x, the square root of the first one, a plus and a minus, and then the square root of 4 is 2 and 2. If you multiply this out, you'll see that the middle terms cancel. So the answer to this one is -2, and the answer to this one is +2.